Welcome you to actually the first annual Career Day. I hope no one heard me say annual because that means we're going to do it again. But I hope to do this every year. I hope it gets bigger and bigger. But what we were actually looking at when we put this together was to try to get employers with students, with future employees, and I think I found out the main problem just a minute ago when the reporter asked me, how many of these companies are actually hiring? And she was shocked when I said, all of them. So she was under the impression that manufacturing went away, like unfortunately most people. I'm here and these people are here to tell you that that's not the case, and we hope to hear some really good information out of this panel from many different sectors, many different areas of manufacturing, kind of telling you where they're at, where they're going, and kind of how you could be part of that. So hopefully you kind of listen to what they're saying and get a good idea of what industry is today. I think we get a lot of impressions of what industry was 30 years ago when I was in it, and it's totally different than what that is. So we'll go ahead and get started, and what we're going to do is give them some questions to answer. They're all going to answer kind of specifically for them, and then at the end, hopefully we'll have a little time that we could take some audience questions as well for the specific companies or anybody up here. So I'm going to try to do a justice of introducing them, but again, these are all people who have been around the area, around West Michigan, in manufacturing for years. And I was kind of trying to total up the different years, but I don't even want to do that. But we've got a lot of experience and a lot of really good years in the West Michigan manufacturing area. So I'll start off far end, Karen Spalding. Karen and I have worked together for quite a long time, especially in the apprenticeship area. But Karen is the senior recruiter at Transmatic in Holland. Transmatic employs 250 people. They have, this year, $65 million in sales. It's a family-owned business. Karen has worked there for 16 years and, again, has been a real good person for us as a real good advocate for Grand Rapids Community College, especially in the Lakeshore region. Okay. And then I didn't put these in the right order. I think I'd do that. Kevin Clay. Kevin works at Pridgeon & Clay. He is a strategic development manager. He's been there for 6 years. Pridgeon & Clay is one of Grand Rapids' biggest companies. They employ 600 people and have about 185 million in sales. Kevin's been with the company for 6 years, and I know Kevin and I have talked a little bit about trying to put together a robotic league in the area, and so we're really trying to get a little bit more into the automation, and hopefully Kevin can get some high schools involved with that. So. There. Jim Newman. Jim is a plant manager at Grand Rapids Plastics. Although new to Grand Rapids Plastics, he has been 14 years in manufacturing. And Grand Rapids Plastics currently employs 150 people in Grand Rapids. Jim Wachinski. Right. Ha! Look at that. Guess you could tell my background. Is from AutoCam. He is the director of human resources. AutoCam employs 250 people, 500 in the U.S. They have several different areas that Jim is going to tell us about. They have a very strong apprenticeship program with the college. Have been with us for a long time now. And they have 160 million in sales. And again, they're a very diverse company in a lot of different areas that Jim will describe to us. And Betsy Simpson, who also has been a friend of the college for many years. Betsy is from Gentex. She's in training and development. Again, I've worked with Betsy for a lot of different things, actually industrial maintenance degree and also the apprenticeship program. Gentex, small company, has 3,900 employees. And getting bigger, 1,100? I'm starting to get into the questions, sorry. And they're just approaching 1 billion in sales. So Again, they'll tell you kind of about their products and as we go through, but again, we have some really good representatives from industry here, so kind of ask any questions and get all the information you can from them. All right. We'll go ahead and start with Karen. Describe your company as it is today and where you're at as far as employment.
Hi, everybody. Transmatic is located in Holland. The company itself has a very strong corporate culture, meaning people really take a lot of responsibility to form our culture. People are very respectful of one another. They're very collaborative. They're not negative. And when somebody enters into our organization that isn't serious about their work or shows up every day and on time and all those things that everybody's been telling students for, the last 18 years of your life, that person sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, by the time you get to working in the real world, so to speak, there's just no excuse for not being there and not being fully on when you're showing up for work. So our company is very professional, very respectful. We're serious about what we do, right down from the person who's maybe taking care of the facility and doing what some of you might consider not important work, like a custodial kind of aspect, all the way up to our managers and team leaders and our skilled journeymen. People are really serious about what they do. We're a relatively small company. We're obviously not a third of the size of Pridgeon and Clay, and much, much smaller than a Gentex. But people know us as a good employer because we are a really solid employer. We do screen out people that don't fit the mold. If you don't fit the mold as far as people who are serious about your career and serious about seeing the company be successful, just don't bother. So that's what I see a lot in the professionals that I speak with, is that there are enough people out there that just aren't serious. We just don't want to have those people waste our time. We need really serious people who want to grow with us, earn a good living, work in a lovely facility. Our facility is relatively new. It's white. It's air conditioned. Everything is cleaned all the time. I'll take either customers or candidates through the shop floor, and then later on in the day, somebody will come up to me and say, "Oh, I'm sorry that area wasn't very well cleaned up." Looks great to me, but we take that very seriously. Organization and the cleanliness of our facility. We invest a lot, like many other of the companies of our size. We invested, pardon me, a lot in the equipment and the building itself, and so that we are assuring you that you have a very high quality of work life, that you work in a lovely facility that you're proud to be associated with, and we expect you to contribute to maintaining it that way. But overall, our company is like a place that people call home. They call their employer, that employer is their home for where they are earning a living. And we take that very seriously. We don't expect you to work so much that you don't have a life outside of your personal life and your interests. But work is such a huge part of what you're contributing and what you're gleaning from that contribution, that we want to make it the best it can be, and we firmly believe in that. And what rapidly follows is innovation, continuous improvement, and a very, very happy customer base. And we've really grown and blossomed because of that. So we share our profits. I don't think we're a wage leader, but we're very competitively compensating our employees. We provide a high level of security. And I think a lot of people over the last 2.5 years were misled by some of the activities that did have to happen. Employers like ourselves, we did have to shrink because our annual revenue was shrinking. But the skilled people that worked for us, the people that handled the tools and dies and the maintenance aspect and did the tool design on 3D CAD systems. Those skilled positions were not the positions that we eliminated. All of those people might have had to work in a different area or work reduced hours, but we knew that the cyclical economy would come back and we had to maintain our capability. And so that's exactly what's happened. Now it's come back even stronger than we had anticipated. And honestly, it's really hard for us to find well-rounded, stable, serious individuals to come into our company. And when I say stable and well-rounded, I mean, I want to hear that, you know, so-and-so, I was speaking with some of the guys that are here from the Allegan Tech Center. I want to know that they, you know, go hunting or have family plans or have special skills and hobbies or like to enjoy their recreation time. That makes you a well-rounded person. And that's what people are made up of. They're made up of their technical skills and their family and their personal traits and the things that they do to enhance their overall life. And I think working for a good employer is one of the aspects that young people have to make a huge decision about. You might not be at the company you choose when you're 20 years old. You might not be there forever. But when you do get in, make a wise choice and try and choose a really reputable company and one that can provide you with a really high quality of work life. And that's the kind of company that we would like to say we run, and I think we're pretty successful at it.
Thank you.
That's it.
Yep.
Thank you. Bridget and Clay has been in the Grand Rapids area for over 60 years now. We started in 1948. We're a family-owned company, and that's a very important part of our corporate culture. We really value family and high amount of employee involvement, whether that's in development programs, outside of work, in community action programs. Something that's always been extremely important to the company, and giving back to the area, West Michigan and Grand Rapids, is always been very important to my family and to the company. We've expanded recently, and we're seeking people who want to expand with the company. We have a facility in Grand Rapids, obviously, also in Franklin, Indiana, Monterrey, Mexico. We're also in Opperstag, Hungary, Katowice, Poland. We've got sales and engineering offices in Shanghai and Germany. And we're constantly looking to expand and to, you know, increase our opportunities to serve our global customers in their own backyards. And one of the things that we are constantly fighting is the idea that when you do a global expansion, you're doing that at the expense of American jobs, and that just simply isn't true. And we've seen a situation very similar to Transmatic, and where we did lose a large number of employees in 2008 and 2009 were horrible years to struggle through. We've emerged a stronger company, but we've also emerged a very different company. We're seeking a different kind of employee. There was a day we used to joke about we were looking for warm bodies, and that just isn't the case anymore. We're looking for very motivated, technically skilled, savvy individuals who are, you know, not only self-starters with a high amount of integrity, but they also have to be interested in continuously improving and into innovating the products and processes that we have inside of our business right now. We're not looking for the same employees that we are, and one of the problems that we are seeing is a lot of the young people have been convinced that it's very important to have a 4-year liberal arts type bachelor's degree, and we've got plenty of those at PNC, but what we're dying on the vine for is some technical skill, some welders, some automation, some people who know how to program a FANUC control arm, things like that. That's really what we're, the situation at Pridgeon and Clay right now, and that's why I'm here today.
Grand Rapids Plastics, family-owned business, been around over the last 10 years. We also are a tier 1 supplier to the big 3. We're also innovated into taking 30% of our industry and making it non-automotive. We do a lot of business out of Detroit area with household goods, keyboards, that type of product. It's not just about automotive any longer. One of the things that we're looking for also is that skill trade. You know, industry in plastics dropped in '08 and '09, like everybody knew. Now it's on its way back. We also are out looking for people with the skill set, technical, you know, people that have programming, engineering level, problem-solving people out there to help us in our industry. You know, injection molding is one of those ones. When you look around, everything is made out of plastic nowadays. And that skill level is the level that we desperately need at Grand Rapids Plastics. We're a fast-growing company. We look for people that want to make a career. Like I said, it's family-owned, and the owners of that company believe in family, believe in, you know, you're part of that family when you come on board with us.
At AutoCam, we, like everyone else that spoke so far, we're in need of technical people. We are a precision machining operation. We have operations in the United States, in Michigan, California, and Boston. We also have foreign operations in France, Poland, Germany, and South America. We supply primarily the automotive industry as a Tier 2 supplier. We also produce what we refer to as medical devices, and those would be the tools, for example, that a surgeon uses, orthopedic surgeon uses in a replacement of a hip. Some of the actual joints, some of the screws, the drills, the pieces that they'll actually perform the surgery with. We too came through the 2008, 2009 year, and you know, we survived, as others did here. And we are now in need of that technical base that has not been around. We've gone to the point where we've made a commitment to apprentice programs. We have one class started now. We have another one that will start in another month, and we're planning the third class for next year. And when we're done, we'll have probably 30 people in an apprentice machining program. So we see the need, our real need is in the skill sets that people coming out of GRCC have, and that is in the machining area. It's a career. It has a lot to offer, and it has a long-term future to it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see you out there. I'm Betsy Simpson, and I work at Gentex Corporation. I've been there for 14 years now. Gentex is, I mean, you couldn't ask me for a better time, what can you say about Gentex, because we're all over the highways, right? I mean, everybody knows we're hiring. Gentex is a Tier 1 supplier and a Tier 2 supplier to the global automotive industry. We make those really cool rear view mirrors that have the rear camera display up there in the mirror. You've seen ads for that. That guy that says, "I'm your worst nightmare," right? The mirror that's on that car, on the outside of the car that does the blind zone, we make those. We're really excited about our products right now, and it's amazing that you can have $1 billion in sales with rear view mirrors, right? It's phenomenal to me that many people buy cars, but they do. And we are growing. It's a great time to be working at Gentex. I'd invite you all to check it out if you're not familiar with us. Gentex is truly doubling its manufacturing capacity right now. We have 4 building projects going on right now that will double us in size as far as manufacturing goes. I don't know a whole lot of places that can say that. Included in that, we are doubling our capacity at our warehouse in Germany. And most of the manufacturing that we do, those jobs are right here in Zeeland or right there in Zeeland, Michigan. We do some very light assembly in our German plant and in the one in China, mostly because those automakers like to go and see it happening, you know, so we kind of snap the mirror together so they can see manufacturing happening. But we like to keep the technology right here in Zeeland because that gives us the opportunity to manage it better. We can make changes when we need to more quickly, more responsively. The second reason we like to keep it right here is for the intellectual property that's attached to those products. You know, you talk about a cool group of people to work with. Our folks not only invent the product, but they also invent the process that builds it. There's no equipment that you can go out and buy, you know, off the shelf that makes these mirrors. We have to invent that too. So it's like double the innovation, right? 2 times. I love it. If if we want to talk about what is it like to work there are 4 cornerstones of our foundation that we all keep in mind when we're making decisions every day. The first one is ownership mentality. We treat that organization, I mean, everyone else on the panel, we talked about what it's like to be part of that family. We think of it that way too. We own this place, and we want to keep it as the special place that it is. The second one is unpretentious management, which is a kind of pretentious way of saying we talk to each other like we're the same. There's no one that's so special that I can't walk into their office and get their attention. If you've been to one of our buildings, you can see that's real. The last 2 are probably the obvious 2. Those, it's less about the way we treat each other, more about the way we think about product, devotion to innovation, devotion to quality. Fred Bauer, our CEO, says, you can have cool things and make cool things, but if they don't work, nobody's going to want them. So really, the most important thing to him is quality. There's just one more thing. Oh, we are global. I told you about our manufacturing plants. We also have sales offices. There are 2 in Japan, 1 in Korea, Germany, the UK, France, Italy, and Sweden. So, yeah, we're everywhere. Thanks.
Thank you. Starting with Kevin, what is your potential, or what do you see Pridgeon and Clay and all of you being in 5 years?
Well, I should have done a better job of saying this beforehand, but we are a metal stamping company. We are 80% or 80 to 85%, depending on the month, in car sales, automotive, small amount of non-automotive. What we're looking at doing is increasing our value add. Instead of stamping components, and now we're looking at integrating into sub-assemblies and some larger assembly work, which means we're in dire need of people who understand automation and welding. We just recently purchased a new Trump 7040i fiber optic laser weld machine, and it's an amazing piece of equipment if only we knew how to use it. So that's where you all come in. But really understanding the technology that we have and the not only the limits but the potential that we have as we start going after larger segments within our customers and within the automotive industry and the other industries that we serve.
Grand Rapids Plastics, over the next 5 years, actually over the next 2 months, we'll be adding 12 brand new molding machines. Actually, they'll be being delivered starting on Thursday of this week. That's where also I need the technical group from here to come help us. Our potential growth is we're opening a new facility that should be open mid-December. Our new distribution center should be opening January 1st of this coming year, which will employ close to another 150 employees for us. Along with that, we're expanding in our assembly areas also with more new robotics and technical aspect of that too.
At AutoCam, the potential, I guess, can be summed up in one word: substantial. We're looking at revenue growth of someplace between 35 to 50% each year going out the next 3 to 5 years. We've made a commitment for $40 million in new capital equipment that'll be coming in over that period of time. For the first time in several years, we've seen what we call booked orders. In other words, business that's committed to out in 2013 and 14 at its highest level that we've ever seen it, and that's not including any new business that may be generated and so forth. So, substantial.
Five years is the perfect amount of time to think about in order for us to project where we're going to be, because much beyond that we don't know, right? One of the things about a publicly traded company like Gentex is that we have to keep growing in order to keep our shareholders happy. And when that's your major revenue stream, right, your investment stream, that's a big deal. So, so growth we're predicated on growth. We're built on that fundamental concept. In order to fuel the growth of the company, we have to grow the talent that works with us. For young folks that are just getting started, I would think that would be very appealing when we dedicate ourselves to helping you become who you want to be. And that's really what my job is about. The other thing I want to say about growth potential is that, with all the expansion that we're seeing, the opportunities are huge. And on the flip side of that, we will have to reinvent ourselves in 5 years. Because when you create a product for automotive, something that, is visible and it's an innovation, there's something that is intrinsic to selling that product. And that is every year for 5 years, the margin that you receive on it goes down. And so by the time you get to the 5th year, you're not making a whole lot of money on that product anymore. And so you have to have something new to put out there in order to fuel the beast, if you will, right? In order to make the money. Now that's a scary proposition because as you get bigger, there's more to support. But it's also really exciting. And if you like that challenge, if you like that kind of energy, tension, energy, then that would be a Gentex thing.
Well, I can echo a lot of the things that have already been said. I did not mention before, we are also a deep-drawn metal stamping company, so we make component parts. We are also international. We have a plant in China. And to kind of comment on Kevin's earlier description, many people think that when a manufacturing company does business on another continent, particularly Asia, they think you're taking jobs away from the American workforce, and that's just simply not always accurate. In our situation, our customers were already over there, and frankly, if we had not set up shop over there, they would have desourced us and found another source to make an air compressor component. We just make metal parts. And but bottom line is that just making those little metal parts provides 300 families with a livelihood. We also have a plant in Mesa, Arizona. So our corporate headquarters is in Holland, and we have plants in Arizona as well as China. So where do we think we're going to be in 5 years? We're probably not experiencing the kind of explosive growth that some of the other panelists have described. We are looking forward to very steady growth and probably more about the 20% per year, maybe 25% per year kind of growth. We also are maintaining our diversity. Many of the companies, and I think Pridgeon and Clay is probably, what did you say, 80% automotive?
It's frightening, yes.
And yeah, that is very frightening. And by design, we've been fortunate that we've only been about 50 to 55% automotive in the last 45 years that we've been in business. And so, so we're going to maintain our diversity, but we're getting into alternative energy. So if you think about the lithium-ion batteries, we've been working on this for about 3.5 years now with Johnson Controls Saft, and we make the canister that holds the lithium-ion batteries. So we're pretty excited about that. We do have a new distribution center, and we are continually earmarking and budgeting a lot of capital dollars for new presses. But as far as us like building a new plant, we're very careful. We're just very, in our industry, precision and highly engineered parts do take a good year or so before they come to market, because companies like Gentex, as Betsy described, those are the people innovating it. And by the time they innovate it and call to us, their supplier, to make the component parts, it hits us, and with our variety of capacity, we sometimes can meet their market, deliver the product to market without having to do a great big addition but we do buy new plants, things like that. So ours is more of a steady growth. And alternative energy and just maintaining our ability to do what we do, that niche of what we do, the best in the industry, and being able to stay diverse and not just being in bed with one particular sector of the economy. I think that's very helpful for our business model.
Thank you. By the way, I think if you go out and talk to all those companies out in the atrium, you're going to hear the same thing. And
Definitely.
in all the meetings I'm talking, they're talking 20%, 25% growth, and that's very typical of what we're looking at right now. So, what threats do you see both to your company and to manufacturing in general? Jim Newman.
Finding the right employees for the right fit for our company, that's probably huge right now. You know, getting the right group of people, making sure it correlates to great teamwork. That's probably the biggest one in the plastics industry right now is everybody's out there trying to get the same group of people and getting the right fit, you know, for what we do.
I would echo that. Finding the right skilled people. We are a precision machining operation, so the skill sets that we need take time to develop. As I indicated earlier, we're very committed to the apprentice program. We found in the past we've been very successful with retaining long-term skilled machinists by home growing them, so to speak. So we've started that commitment in anticipation of the growth that we're looking for in 12 through 15. And you know, we're obviously always looking for those skill sets out in the workforce, but the availability of people with those skill sets is just not there. So we've taken the approach that we have to be ready, because the biggest threat then becomes if we don't have the people, we can't assume that new business that's out there and the potential of taking on those orders, because the last thing you want to do is take on those orders, not be able to produce, and then, you know, then the snowball starts to get smaller as you go the other way down.
I'll make it 3 for 3. We can't find the talent.
4 for 4. In a training that I used to do, I don't do it very often anymore, but like Gentex, as Betsy described, they have their 4 cornerstones of their principles, and we're a principle-based, we have a principle-based management philosophy. And what I used to say to people when it came to all 4 of our principles, participation, identity, equity, competence, the core common denominator of all of those things are the people. And our company rarely ever has to work on a Sunday, which is great for everybody, I think. But I usually say, what does our company look like on a Sunday? Beautiful building, lots of equipment, raw material in the racks, but nothing is happening. And we happen to be very fortunate in that we could buy a lot of equipment if we needed to, and we can buy a lot of raw material when we have orders, and we can buy more buildings and more land. But I can't buy talent. I can attract and try and retain talent, but when we're facing a labor market as stressed out as this one is, and boy, it's very counterintuitive. You know, I've said for the last year and a half, and I said this to Kevin, where are all the quality techs or die setters or CNC programmers or PLC programmers or electricians or you name it? I can't find them. But where did all those people go that I know were very gainfully employed by the furniture sector, the automotive sector, the food industry that they seem to have maintained. But there were so many different sectors of our economy in West Michigan. Where did all of those people go when they lost their jobs? Are they still on unemployment, or did they move away? So bottom line is, I can't buy people to show up. And if I don't attract them and retain the skilled talent, our company will look like every other company on a Sunday. nothing will be happening. And that is a scary proposition as somebody who cares intimately and deeply about what the company is like 5.5, sometimes 6 days a week. So yeah, 4 for 4.
I'll make it 5 for 5, but I want to get to one other point first. There are two threats, as I see it, that, major threats to Pritchett and Clay, and the first of which is the intrusion in policies of the U.S. government. And mainly it's just that they're exceptionally unpredictable. It'd be nice if we had some predictability as far as tax code, extending tax breaks, R&D tax credits, things like that. It's not so much raising or lowering, it's that we need these to be fixed costs. We need to understand what our cost of doing business is going to be before we can start allocating resources for growth, for hiring, for research and development. We need to have some of these things solidified. Another way the government gets involved is sometimes when they pump resources, government resources, money, other things, into a lot of different alternative energy. Some of it is very valid. A lot of the battery technology and a lot of it is very valid. But then there are some, and you're starting to see, you know, Solar Avionics and other companies that you'll see, Solar Ray, as other companies you're seeing that really weren't worthy of that taxpayer capital, and they created an artificial market. Now these markets have to stand on their own at some point. And when that happens, there's going to be a large amount of attrition of not only companies, but of course of employees. The second thing, and I've said this earlier to my cohorts here, manufacturing needs a facelift. It just needs a facelift. We've had some damage done to our reputation and to our image over the past few years, and it's been unfair. Not that these have been perfect times, but we haven't been really any worse off than most people. The panel, everybody hiring? Everybody here hiring? Yep. Does everybody here also offer some type of educational reimbursement? We want to pay you to work and pay for your school while you're working so we can pay you more when you're done going to school. What kind of racket is that?
Yeah.
That's a pretty darn good deal. And we're having a difficult time with that. And those are our big threats.
Thank you. We've kind of touched on this a little bit here and there, but in specifics, what skills and abilities are you looking for your current employees? And Jim?
Again, what we're looking for is we have a machinist-based operation, and on top of those machinists are what we call technicians, which are multi-skilled machinists, if you will. You know, and our goal with our existing workforce is to take our secondary machinists and upgrade their skills internally, so that eventually the ideal would be that we have a shop full of technicians, because again, the same thing would happen. We'd have more higher priced employees, but we'd also have more higher priced employees with a much broader skill base, which allows us to then become more innovative in the things that we do. As was mentioned earlier, one of the things that happens in the automotive industry is the customer's always looking for price decreases. Year 1 you make X, and by year 5 you better have found a way to make that process, improve that process, so that you can still make money on it in year 5 or maybe 6 or 7. Because if you don't, now you have a product that the customer still needs, but you've taken all of your profit margin out of it, and you still have to make it in order to keep the customer happy. So we're making a concentrated effort, along with our machinist program, to take our existing employee base and expand their skill set as well.
Okay, I'm going to do a history lesson on you because I'm getting to be that age. When I was little, I was a good reader, and my grandmother told me that I could do whatever I wanted to do because I was a reader. I was good with literacy, right? And then I discovered that I was good at math, and I used to teach math, and I used to teach in a school just like this. And what I used to tell my students then was that they needed to have math literacy. And now, 20 years later, that I've worked at Gentex, what I say is that you need to have technology literacy. And I'm going to go even one step further. You really have to have all three. You have to be literate and be able to speak to people so they can understand you, right? And you can understand them so we can get the work done. You have to be able to speak in math because that's the language that so many of us use in order to demonstrate that we've had results. And you need to be able to use the equipment that's out there, which is very technologically complex, in order to solve problems. And that's kind of like the frosting on the cake, because it's not enough to just be literate with words, literate with math, and literate with technology. If you can't marry those things and solve problems, you're not helping. So that's what we're looking for.
That was perfectly said. Did everybody really pay attention to that? That was very well said. I'm going to use that. And occasionally I might give you credit for it, but that was so well said. Thank you, Betsy. That was awesome. I'm going to add to that, not only do you have to be literate in your communication, in your math, and in the technology, but wow, folks, you got to show up. And there are people that I don't understand if they just have an I don't feel like it day. And our company is very accommodating when it comes to balancing, life outside of work and understanding that people have lives and families and commitments. And that's all great. But I am amazed at how often I will have a relatively, somebody just start and they'll have an absence within the first month, sometimes within the first week, and it just ends the employment opportunity right then and there. It's just done, and most of the time it's done. But I am just amazed at how many people don't lead a stable life, stable enough to ensure that they have prioritized getting up and being ready, mentally ready and physically ready for work 5 days a week for the whole day on whatever shift you need to work or whatever the shift the company needs you to work. And we really try and work with people on that. We don't just plunk people in a shift that they don't like. But so all that literacy that Betsy spoke of is certainly, the icing on the cake. But holy smokes, guys, just totally showing up every day you are scheduled to be there is huge. And I just cannot tell you how shocking it is for me to experience. And it's not necessarily a generational thing, but it's just, I don't know what it is. It's like I said, I think people need to lead lives that are stable enough to ensure that their active and full participation is dependable. My experience has not been 100% on that one. So employability skills, reliability, dependability, all of those things, maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but it's just startling.
I'm going to get very specific. Welders, die setup techs, CNC programmers, weld techs. I'm looking for industrial maintenance techs. I'm looking for people with some technical skill and a little bit of technical knowledge, because that's the basis of the company is understanding these things. And just like Betsy had alluded to, there isn't a way. There's not a product you can buy off the shelf to manufacture stamped metal components. You have to invent that. And to keep jobs here in Grand Rapids, this is not a cheap place to manufacture, West Michigan. So we really have to be at the forefront of all of this innovation, or we're just going to see these jobs turn into commodity-type jobs. They're going to go south and eventually completely out of the country. So I'm looking for some very specific things, technical people.
Very good. Okay, then, how can our students, my students, who may or may not have been bribed to be here, but how can they get prepared for you? What can they do to get ready for you?
No, that.
Uh-oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
No,
it's
go ahead,
all
Jim.
Good. I see how plastics rates now.
Go ahead, Jim. Sorry.
Metal people. And I'm with the stamping folks.
in plastics and technicians, you gotta have everything that Betsy said. I mean, to get the plastic out, you've gotta have all of the basic reading, math skills to make it all happen. I mean, really, in my field, the process techs are the quarterback of the team. Without them, we have nothing. And that's how desperate we are, is we need the quarterbacks to come to work. Like the young lady on the end said, without people showing up to work, we have nothing. And their livelihoods for the rest of the building are all on the line. 150 people's jobs are all on the line, waiting on one person because they didn't decide to come in. And it is that huge to all of us. That's why we're here today, to get people that are motivated, that want to do something with their life, to better their career, to start that family aspect out there. I mean, in our industry, it's growing fast again. Plastics took a nosedive, but now we're on the way back. And as one of the people on the panel said, where did all the people go? Because I'm going to tell you, in our industry, and I talk to the other suppliers out there outside, they're all looking for the same group of people I'm looking for. But they've all disappeared out of West Michigan. Well, jobs are all coming back to West Michigan right now, especially in our field. Day doesn't go by that people overseas call me to take on work. And that's huge. So, it is about the basic stuff. Coming to work, reading, writing, and, the technical skills now are really what you need the most of.
I screwed up every day. Okay, now, Betsy, what are the things you want our students to know, to do, to study for? How can they prepare for your company?
I think it's like this. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say that I bet that most of you don't love writing essays. Is that a pretty fair statement? Yeah. Because when somebody asks you to write an essay, right, you have to create something out of nothing. Is that right? It's just an idea. You got to create something out of nothing. They think it's going to turn out a certain way, and you got to make a point at the end, right? That's what I want you to prepare for. Except I want you to prepare for creating something out of nothing. And you laughed, and I get it, and I chose something that was laughable, right? But that's very real, because the problems that we face every day, there probably isn't a process that's all spelled out already for you to follow. You have to invent the solution. And that's what we're looking for. Somebody who's willing to pick up the pencil and push through something to get us a little bit closer to the solution. Now, what does that take to do, right? It takes courage, it takes confidence, and it takes competence in the stuff that you know. And you got to pull that all together and make something out of nothing. The other thing I would encourage kind of echoes what Karen's been talking about. You have to be really energetic, because there's a lot of work to do. So I would say that and all the other stuff I've talked about, that's what we're looking for.
Once again, I'm not going to reiterate everything that Betsy and our other panelists have said, but energy, adding that energy is wonderful. I love it when people walk through the plant or even walk into an interview and they're like, I mean, I'm sorry that the tape recorder can't get my physical image, captured, but let's just say I'm an uninterested blob, just totally not into it. Yeah, have some pep in your step, I mean, come on, show up. I don't know, that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, that's easy. I mean, that's the easy part. Yeah, just don't socially loaf. Just get there, do your thing. Another thing that we're constantly looking for is somebody who, people who are bi or multilingual. Doesn't really matter what other language it is. It's really more just the type of person who's, especially in America, who's going to take the time to actually learn to communicate, in another language. That's something that as the more I travel abroad, it becomes something that's a bit of an embarrassment. How monolinguistic we are.
Yes.
in America. And so I would suggest that that's probably something that would just is better. Also, just a tip: do a little research on the company where you're applying. Just a little bit. Most everybody's got a website, I gotta imagine, and the core products are out there. Probably you'd probably be able to find something about the customers, the company's 5-year plans, or their strategic goals. Learn about the company. First of all, it'll help the interview go a lot better. It'll be more like a conversation than an interrogation, which is nice, and it will help you really own that job or own that position.
Being part of a team. I mean, you come to work, you spend most of your time with the people that you work with. That's your team. It's like your family. You know, that's what we look for. Team building skills. What skills do you come with? You know, communication, like Clay said. We're also looking for people that can speak multi-languages. It helps. It's not a total need, but it does help. It's all about the effort you put into the job that you want. You know, at the end of the day, we're looking for people that want to be part of a great team.
Again, the creativity is the key. AutoCam was founded as an entrepreneurial company. It still is one today. We're very much team-oriented, and we're very much idea-oriented. People who come up with an idea that may be a bad idea or not the right idea are not chastised, they're not looked down at. They're basically told, that didn't work, go find something else. And so that they know that they can continue to think off the wall or whatever. I tell new employees coming in the door that we're entrepreneurial, and that if our conference rooms had chandeliers in them, someone would be swinging from it during a meeting, because that's how free-flowing the environment is. The topic may be X, but by the time you leave the meeting, many times you've gone back through the alphabet to D or E or F. So the creativity, the essay writing, if you will, is a key component of what we look to make our survival happen.
I get to editorialize because I got the mic, but for my students, notice none of them said welding skills or machining skills. And there's a lot more than the technical skills we're trying to teach you. And again, we're also trying to teach you teamwork, being there, showing up. So when I'm hounding you about being there, there's a reason, okay? So I always thought that we can only do so much. Again, Kevin talked about the new equipment he showed me. He showed me the brochure, and it was foreign language to me what this piece of machinery is. We can't teach you that, but we can teach you to learn that and be able to adjust to it and work with a group to learn how that process works. And so it was really unique to me to find out none of them said a specific technical skill, because that is less important than what you bring to the table. So any questions from the group? We got about 5 minutes if you.
All right, so you didn't exactly say a certain technical skill or whatever. Is that something that above and beyond the schooling you'd be willing to train somebody if they had the right personality traits and whatever else you're looking for? Or are you looking for somebody that can come in and just punch buttons on that machine and know it automatically?
Everybody on the panel, all of these companies have educational reimbursement and training programs. So not only do we want you to continue education and training, but we want to pay for it. So so we have some skin in the game too. But yeah, absolutely. It's a type of person that we're looking for. That's exactly right.
I'm gonna diverge from that a little bit, because I expect you to have a technical skill. Remember that technology literacy thing. So you won't get an interview for the kinds of jobs that you'll be applying for with your associate's degree. You won't get an interview if you don't have that. So do I expect to be able to continue to develop you? Do you have to have that I gotta keep learning mindset? You bet. But yeah, if you don't have that, we won't meet.
I've noticed that you guys are saying that you will help reimburse for college tuition and things like that. Does that also apply towards classes to go learn Spanish?
At Pridgeon and Clay, yes, it does.
Yeah, if we have a business need for it, anything within the spectrum for a business need, yes, we would cover. So if we felt like, let's say you're a maintenance person and you work on machines where knowing Spanish would be helpful in some way, or you have another idea of how you'll use that, absolutely. Yeah, if you want to go for basket weaving, probably not, but yeah, on the spectrum, most are, job related, so.
Well, I write apprenticeships for these companies, especially in Holland. I've written Spanish into many, many apprenticeships. Just makes sense. It's the culture there, and that's what we do.
Jump into, we teach German, Chinese, Japanese, and French on site. We don't teach Spanish because we don't have any business affiliation with Spanish companies or Spanish speaking.
And AutoCAM, we would do the same. We would certainly provide it. We're looking for some sort of, relationship to the job. But we've had people that have gone off to France, and we've had people trained in Portuguese as well as French, based on some job connection.
I probably don't need a mic because my students don't. Troy Wellwood with Grand Rapids Community College as an instructor here. All of these companies looking for individuals and growing over the next 5 years. How much connection do you have corporately with your local high schools and helping recruit potential students into our technology programs, as I'm spending a tremendous amount of time trying to evaluate ways that we can market our tech programs to high schools, but we need a lot of help. What connections are we seeing corporately done?
I'd like to answer that one. We have a strong connection at Transmatic, and Mr. Sarver has a group of his students from the Allegan Tech Center, and gosh, has it been every year for the last 5 years or so? We invite you guys in, we pay for their transportation, and I invite in all of our local area high school machine shop classes, just like I do with the Allegan Tech Center. We've gotten to the point where it became a strategic initiative for us to start recruiting at the high school level to actually bring co-op back. If you remember, co-op was pretty popular for a while. Then it kind of faded because of the safety and the legal thing. It's difficult because sometimes the students themselves, if they have a sport, if they play an instrument, if they have a family commitment, if they have a church commitment, they just are already packed with so many activities. Last year I did an open house and invited parents and the students of, like, I don't know, the 4 area, mostly Highland and Grand Haven. I didn't do Mr. Sarver's tech group because they had already come in and he brought like his whole class. It was perfect through our plant. But I did this open house. I had 4 people show up. I mean, I thought I'd at least get like 50 with a parent. And, like, what if you got, 20 kids and 1 parent? That's at least 40 people. I got 4. We were done pretty early that night. People are really busy, but I definitely believe that high school individuals need to be invited into manufacturing, because if they haven't had a parent that's in it or visited the parent, we all kind of know what a hospital is like and what the financial institutions are like and what teachers' jobs and academics are like, because we all experience that at some point during our lives. But in manufacturing, they don't always know. And I think that's one reason why they're not as interested in pursuing some of the skill sets that GRCC does just a great job of offering a huge array of different technical skills. But not that many people, high school people, are really thinking in terms of that. They seem to be avoiding manufacturing generally, or going into engineering for a 4-year degree, which is great. I mean, I'm not criticizing that, but right now, most of the employers that I speak with, we also have a very large need for people with an applicable skill set after a 2-year degree and independent thinkers and all of those good things that we talked about before.
Well, with Karen, by the way, she was the one company in the winter of 2008, if you remember the economy, who called me up and said, "Can I come and do a presentation to your machine shop class?" And I went, when I fell off the chair, then I got back up and said, "Yeah, sure." So she's been there recruiting in the times that are tough and the times that are good. So we really appreciate that.
Another question I wanted to ask is, I talked to a couple of companies today. They said, yeah, after you get done with your, your CNC machinist course, things like that, we can get you in an apprenticeship program, but they're only going to pay you $7.40. They're going to pay you minimum wage or $8 an hour or even $9. I kind of laughed. I'm 27. I know there's a huge age variety in the crowd today. I mean, some of them are young college students. Some of us are older. I have a 2-year-old. Bills I gotta pay. Things like that. So we need competitive wages to be a skilled laborer or what have you.
I could mention, and we're a fairly small company, and we're not a wage leader. So I would consider, and I don't know, but I would consider like an auto die or auto cam or Gentex. Those would be, and even Pridgeon and Clay being just so much larger than we are, would be more wage leaders. But just to give you a reference point, to start our apprenticeship program, and this is not private knowledge. I mean, this is public information because we have to have our wage schedule for our apprenticeships approved by the state, and I say this in all the class presentations I do. But if you have an associate's degree, you would start an apprenticeship at Transmatic at $16.50 an hour, and then if you worked the off shift, you'd get an additional 10% per hour. So you'd get like an additional $1.65 an hour. Now you would stay at $16.50 for a period of time until our wage schedule, until you amass a number of hours, like I think it's like, I don't know, 2,000 hours or 2,500 hours. I don't know, I don't have it memorized. But so for a good year or so, you'd stay there. And then every 1,000 hours that you put in, you would get a certain percentage increase so that by the end of the 4-year program, you're at $18.50 an hour. And what I just realized is that I gave you the rates from a couple years ago. Actually, we just changed that for this coming year. It's going to be, I believe, at 17, and then you end up at 19. So, and then once after you've been a journeyman for a while, and if you've done really well, completed all of the requirements, then you shoot up to like 20 an hour, 21 an hour pretty quickly. So, and maybe the company you spoke with is small. Maybe they, maybe there's a reason for, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are at a very low starting wage rate. It really depends on what you're interested in and what kind of skills you do bring to the table. So anyway, just for reference. And I know I'm not a leader in wages. I'm sure that other companies beat us.
I had a comment, just because I talked to 4 or 5 companies, one told me 805, but they're gonna bring you in as a janitor because they wanna see that you're gonna come to work 5 days a week, every day first. You're not gonna invest a lot of money into it, so they're gonna know you're gonna come to work every day.
Yeah, to bolster what the gentleman just said, we have like a 90-day probationary period before you would be able to take advantage of the educational reimbursement and things like that, and that's what it is. It's just a little smell test period to make sure that you are going to come to work and that it's going to work out. But yeah, 805 that's relative. That's pretty low. I would think that
Yeah.
I think most factories minimum would be in the 12-13 range.
Or even like
Even for a
a
custodial
machine
type position.
operator or something, 9 or 10 an hour. And I mean, that's just like literally assembling, I don't know who you spoke with, but
Yeah.
but that's part of your job as a prospective employee is to do your homework. Be choosy. This is a huge decision. You want to go with a company that you can be proud to say you're associated with. And if you don't feel like you're being adequately compensated, that will reflect in your attitude and your performance at work eventually anyway. So it's all relative, so, but you're in the driver's seat there.
I would like to thank all of you for coming, and more importantly, all of our panel members to give us their heads up and their information on what you need to do to meet their needs. I hope this was helpful to all of you. I, again, appreciate everything from our panel, and please give them a hand. And we have another hour of the event, so feel free to go around and look at some other things yet, and I'm sure they'll talk to you individually if you got any specific questions.